You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Lohman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Lohman.
Hey, welcome everybody. Doug is back this week. Hey, Doug.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I have a little cold. So
Nice.
for people who are really annoyed by things clicking in your teeth, I have a lozenge in there, and I'm probably going to be moving that around a little bit. So
Personally, I'm not one of those. I actually enjoy clicking of teeth. Oh, I love that. Thank you.
yeah,
Keep
that's a
going.
nice sound. We're going to pursue the news in this episode before our Christmas break. So that includes the Trump wall showdown, Patreon, latest Patreon news, some Facebook news. We're going to talk about the economy, which thankfully is Doug's expertise because I don't know anything about it. And then I guess we have some Facebook news. So some good holiday cheer stuff going on.
Yeah,
Let's start with a joke. We have Joke Man left 2 jokes.
great.
Here we go.
Hey, Sonny, a joke for you. 2 women were out shopping. They started to discuss their home lives, and one said to the other, "Seems that all my boyfriend and I do anymore is fight. I've been so upset I've lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks." The friend asked, "Well, why don't you just leave him?" The first one said, "Well, not yet. I want to lose at least another 15 pounds first." Bye.
I wish I had one of those boyfriends.
Yeah, there's a
Dang
lot
it.
of things like that that are actually
I was just
like
thinking,
I had a colonoscopy this week,
oh my God.
and I just looked at it as like a way to really jumpstart your diet.
Yeah.
You know, because how else are you going to fast? You know, without the demands of the doctor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's impossible to do it.
Right. You could go right from there into a paleo diet because you've already been through like the worst low carb flu
Totally.
possible.
Totally.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
Colonoscopy.
I kind of feel like my whole life is symbolized by a colonoscopy right now,
Oh, yeah.
and the whole country, the political situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All
don't
right.
you kind of feel that way?
Whatever bad is that if it's bad, yes. I feel like
Well, yeah. Someone digging around in your butt for cancer is basically how I feel about the world right now.
All right, here's joke number 2.
Hey, Sonny, a joke for you. Guy goes in a bar. He figures he's going to be there a while, so he asks the bartender, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi password?" Bartender says, "You need to buy a drink first." I said, "Okay, I'll have a Coke." Bartender asks, "Well, is Pepsi okay?" He says, "Sure. How much is that?" $3. "Okay, great. Here you go. So what's the Wi-Fi password?" Bartender says, "You need to buy a drink first. No spaces, all lowercase."
Ah, good one. Take note, bartenders of America.
I totally missed it.
What?
I was only half. I kind of missed the setup, but I'll take it for.
Guy walks into a bar, asks the bartender, "Hey bartender, what's the Wi-Fi password?" Bartender says, "You have to buy a drink first." He says, "Okay, I'll have a Coke." Is Pepsi all right? Yeah, Pepsi's okay. All right, how much is that? $3. Gives him $3. Says, "Okay, so what's the Wi-Fi password?" "You have to buy a drink first, no spaces."
Okay, that's pretty good.
Starbucks should have that one so that when people come and loaf around in their store, they can make fun of them.
No. Hey, did you see the joke someone left on the site too?
Yeah, I
Another
did.
one?
You want to read
Are
that
you
one?
gonna read that one?
You go
You
ahead
gonna
and
read
read
it?
that one.
A Republican, a Democrat, and a Socialist lived in the same house. One day the house burned down, and only the Republican lived. Do you want to know why?
Why?
He was the only one at work.
I get it, because Democrats, they're on welfare and they don't work.
Exactly.
All right. If you want to call in a joke for the next show, which won't be next week because it's Christmas, but the week after, it's 707-681-5834. You can also call in a topic request. You can comment here. Let us know what you think. about the show, about what we're talking about, that we're wrong. We like hearing from you guys, even if it's a criticism. And I would advertise my Patreon account, except I'm probably closing it down by the end of the year. So we'll get into that later in the show.
Yeah.
First news topic is this crazy. Okay, so we know that Trump has threatened to shut down the government if he doesn't get his $5 billion for the wall. And then we heard he was kind of caving on that, and everyone's freaking out. And Ann Coulter said Trump's a joke presidency. He's got no legacy. Everything he ran on, he's not doing. His main platform is just over. He's about to get a full Democrat House now, and his chance is gone. And Trump's response was to unfollow her on Twitter. So,
well, that's the worst thing you can do in this day and age, right?
Yeah, I'm glad he's dealing with it. So, I don't know. There's still some talk that maybe the government will shut down. I just doesn't your brain explode that they didn't even freaking try in 2 years?
Yeah.
They didn't even try. And Trump, he's got the people's ear, and he's got this direct access. And this was the number one issue of his candidacy.
Yeah.
Border security and the wall. It's not even immigration policy. It's just, God damn it, secure our border. And then we as a people, through our elected representatives, get to decide what our immigration policy is, and we can work that out. Obviously, there are problems. Nobody's happy with it. But first and foremost, we have 22 illegal aliens in this country. Approximately. It could even be more than that. And we need at first, I got to be honest, I wasn't a proponent of the wall. I don't know what your attitude was when he was running. But I thought, well, we need border security, and there's obviously a problem. I don't know if the wall is the answer. I don't really know, because I'm not an expert on border security, and I still feel like I can't really comment on that. But at this point, I think we need it as a symbol. At this point, it's like a symbol of America asserting its sovereignty and its right to decide who comes in. Mm-hmm. So I'm for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you had a similar progression? I don't remember if we talked about it before.
Yeah, I think there needs to be, I don't really care what form it takes. At this point, though, I'm almost with you, where if the Democrats had reacted to his proposal with, we need to secure the border, but, maybe a wall's too expensive, or there's better ways to do it, and let's do it this way or that way, I think you could discuss it. But because the argument has become so bifurcated between we need a wall and we need completely open borders, let migrant caravans, bum rush the border, it's become so bifurcated in this way. I almost think you need it, just like you said, as a symbol to reassert our control over the government and, our control over our own sovereignty, and as a statement that America is a country, with a border. It's a sovereign country, and you need to respect our laws.
Right.
And so I totally agree with your sentiment. I don't know that it has to be, like a 1,000-mile Chinese wall or something like that.
Could be a network of drones.
Yeah, it could be guys on horseback. I don't know. It could be a lot of different things, but you're exactly right that at this point,
it seems like because the wall has become a symbol more than any, it's probably practically useful. I've seen articles that talk about Israel's wall with Egypt, and that has really cut illegal immigration almost to zero.
Yep.
So, it does work. So,
but there's a larger issue too, which is just the discussion over the point, because it's not as if, the two sides, we've all agreed that we're a sovereign nation, we have a border, and we have a problem. Like, just the identification that there's an issue here where, you have this influx of millions of people coming to the country, and the effect that has, just the identification of that as a legitimate problem that people can be concerned about, should be concerned about, and that we need some sort of policy to deal with it. We're still at the point right now where just asserting that as a fact gets you called names and, gets you picketed. So to me, it's become a much bigger issue. And I think Tucker made a great point on a show, it wasn't on a show, it was some interview where he basically said, Trump's contribution may not be as someone who really got anything done, but as someone who at least got us discussing the real, identifying what the real issues are.
Are we,
in our
though?
country.
Are we discussing that? Because it seems like all we are is discussing his tweets, rather than, I don't know.
No, I think that's right. On the margin, that's what people engage in, is the tit for tat. But in the bigger picture, it has provoked this entire debate, and I think people's sides have become more clear.
Right.
And I mean, at least Congress, for them not to have, in 2 years, not to have had hearings and a debate of some kind where they said, okay, here's a basic proposal for how we're going to fix the immigration system. And this is what we agree we want it to look like, in terms of this is how many we admit, this is how we deal with HB1 visas, this is how we deal with people coming into work, this is how we deal with people that come in and go on welfare, this is how we deal with sanctuary cities, all these really practical, concrete problems that need to be dealt with that are just being passed, the buck is being passed. And, we're ending up with, schools in our area here where, more than half the school is speaking Spanish. There's.
You're in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I mean, you're not even in California or Texas.
No, and even in places like Wisconsin, it's, we have a school superintendent or school principal in one school where that was Latino, that was, not, was actually caught faking test scores, and
nice.
Where it's a real problem if you have a white kid going to this school, it's a problem. I mean, and the elites
Why
are
is
now.
it a problem? Let's explain that. Let's break that down, because my mom was an inner city public school teacher for 30 years in Minneapolis. And the last 5 years, and she's been retired now for a while, the last 5 years, she said, were really hard, really, really hard, because so much of her classroom didn't speak English. And the reality of that means that she can't teach. That's what that means. So she's not in her classroom teaching because she has to deal with the fact that so many children don't speak English. It's a big job just dealing with that.
Yeah.
And so you're not teaching the English-speaking children as effectively as you might like. You don't have the time. And you can't come up with creative ways of teaching because everything has to be translated. You have to realize what a burden this is on English-speaking teachers who don't speak Spanish. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, you're hitting on a huge point, which is a lot of people don't consider the actual practical effect of that. There's a great thinker that you and I both know of, Ludwig von Mises, who is a great scholar of the 20th century, and he actually. I remember reading him with respect to how he thought about culture and nationalism and the nation state, and he really defined it around language. That language was one of the keys, if not the key attribute that defines a people, and it's not mystical. I mean, in order for us to communicate effectively and to feel sort of empowered and a part of our culture and the country. In the region you're in, you have to be able to communicate and speak the same language. And by not, forcing these students to adopt English as their first language, they're actually doing a disservice to the kids.
Right.
How does that benefit those kids to not be really fluent in English? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, it harms the citizen, and it doesn't benefit this new immigrant at all. Even the Vikings, when they conquered England, learned English. I don't know if you're aware of that. They influenced English, but English remained English.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. And
well, you have to. I mean, otherwise you have two societies.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have conflicts. You have political and legal conflicts between races of people. Essentially, you're bifurcating the society, and you're not assimilating. And to the extent that we're not, anyways.
Yeah, we don't need to get all into this stuff. I think to me, it's two separate issues, really. There's immigration policy, which is pretty complicated. There are different kinds of immigrants, different kinds of things going on. There's marriage. There's refugees, there's work permits, there are people just wanting to migrate, there's the lottery. I mean, there's all these different things going on. And it's so screwed up. Like, it obviously needs to be fixed.
Yes.
And the conflict among Americans is making that really difficult for anybody to do anything about it. But why can't we all agree that the border should be secure and we should actually get to decide?
I think that is agreed.
I think it is primarily. I think the most people agree with that. There are some weirdo libertarians who think that you have some right to move across a border regardless. Like, I'm sorry, but that's so absurd. And so we don't live in some Star Trekian utopia, everybody.
Right.
Get over it. We are a country, we're a nation, we have borders. And as a group, we have a right to put a line there and say, you can't cross this without our goddamn permission. I don't know why that's hard for some people.
That's why we have that's why you create a government in the first place, is to protect yourself from foreign invasions.
It's just a basic self-defense issue. That's it. It's not even more complicated than that. So this border issue, I think Trump could have taken it and really put a lot of pressure on Democrats. It's a great PR issue, actually.
Yeah, I agree.
So, there's just nothing, there's no negatives here. The left can squirm around and fight it all they want. It just makes them look stupid.
Yeah, totally. It's a total winning issue.
Yeah.
Because that's why Trump probably won the election.
It is
that was
why
the one
won.
thing.
And all those Dems that crossed over, it's because of that.
I mean, if you want to unite, the mainstream Republicans with the Reagan Democrats and the blue collar Democrats, that's the issue that unites people, is, concern about immigration, because it really affects our day-to-day lives,
and belittling that concern as, it's just about jobs, like, that's BS. There are so many things going on and so many reasons why illegal immigrants is not okay.
Yeah, look at Europe.
I don't need to laundry list it. I mean, yeah, they're having trouble with legal immigration, or just mass immigration, but I'm talking about illegal. You don't know who these people are. Suddenly we have this weird polio virus spreading throughout the United States. It started in California. Gee, I wonder why. Who brought that freaking disease into this country that's killing American children now or disabling them? So we've got diseases, and that's real. That's not like, people have diseases anyway. I mean, so what? That doesn't mean we need to bring in more, okay? We get to set the border, and we get to decide. If you have a disease, no. If you're a terrorist, no. If you're a criminal, no. If you're a drug dealer, no. Even if drugs are legal, I don't want. If we don't know who you are, no. Like, get a sponsor, get a job, and then come back. So, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm being really harsh about it, but anyway.
Well, there's an article that Daniel Horowitz wrote, and it's basically about, like, why didn't Republicans have controlled the House for 2 years. What the hell have they done? Like, why didn't they just jam this through? And there's some real concrete, like, kind of political points he makes as far as how they could have done that. But at the end, he says this, and I think I totally agree with it. He said, the moral of the story is that when you believe in something with all your heart and soul, as Democrats do, you will find a way to win, even with 0 branches of government in your corner. When you believe in nothing beyond the campaign promise, you'll find a way to lose, even with control of all 3 branches. Yeah. And
they're just not in sync with the constituency, I guess, or I'm wrong about the constituency, and the constituency is actually also not really sure what they want or what they think. And maybe that's true. Maybe the majority of Republicans are wishy-washy. That's probably true.
I think part of it, though, is this is a point I wanted to make on the show today, was something I've been thinking about for a while, which is that the Democrats are really good at politics, and they control the narrative in the mainstream media. And the Democrats have succeeded for 2 years in really hijacking the narrative. And Republicans and people on the right have done a terrible job fighting back against it. And so think of this stupid Russia stuff that's still going on, and how that has really dominated the narrative, like these hearings and the back and forth. And obviously what it's really unveiled is how corrupt, the deep state is, and how we have a 2-tiered system of justice. But beyond that, it's been a huge distraction. And meanwhile, I don't know. Did you get your health insurance premium schedule this year? I mean, it's horrendous. I mean, we've still got illegal immigration. We still have soldiers in Afghanistan. I mean,
we still have Obamacare. Like, what the fuck are they doing?
We have 20-something trillion dollars now, another $1 trillion in debt. The economy's rolling over.
The Democrats vote as a bloc. You're not going to get 50 Democrats peeling off from the majority. They always vote the same. They vote as a bloc. They never don't. And so now that they've taken over the House, it's done. It's just done. There's not going to be anything done for the next 2 years unless the Democrats want it. And oddly, what the Republicans are working really hard on right now is this crime bill that the Democrats want.
How is this possible? I mean, I thought 2 years ago they had a window where you could just pretty much jam anything through you wanted,
right,
within reason, and there was certainly two or three things you could have done.
What people wanted: a repeal of Obamacare, a secure border, those two things in particular.
And what did we get?
We didn't get either of those things. We've gotten some good things from Trump, but I haven't seen anything good come out of Congress. And I don't know why Trump can't really put pressure on them. I don't think he's skilled enough at being president to know how to put pressure on them. He doesn't write any bills. He doesn't present any bills to Congress.
No, I think maybe that's what Tucker was getting at. I mean, I think he's in over his head politically. I don't think he had people who understood how Washington works and how the game is played and so on and so forth. But really beyond that, the system is sort of broken fundamentally anyways. And a lot of it has to do with the divide between Americans themselves. There's not,
right.
There's such hostility.
There really is.
And there's such a divide that I think it is, it's really hard for them to believe or do anything on either side. It's only getting worse.
That's why I'm like with this crime bill. I mean, I was reading that Soros was a big funder of the propaganda around it. He's been a big funder of all these local races for attorney general and for prosecutors. Like, he's really starting to put millions and millions of dollars into local races of just who's handling the law in each state. Who is this guy? So as a funny aside, I was watching this show about French gardens on Netflix. It's really a very beautiful show. But anyway, right after Louis XIV takes power, he's like 14 years old or something. And there was this guy who was the finance minister of France who was extremely wealthy, and he built this huge garden, like Versailles style, one of these things that just rakes the landscape, and these fountains. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. It's so huge. And he does this garden, and everybody's amazed with it, but not the king, because the king's like, you don't get to be bigger and more wealthy than me. 3 weeks later, he arrests the guy, and he was in jail for the rest of his life.
Oh.
And then Louis XIV commissioned the gardeners to build the garden at Versailles after he arrested and, see, he's like asserting his kingly power. And here we have a person like George Soros who, he's putting like 22 times what the other guy has in funding into races for these small time positions, but they have big influence locally. And who is he? I don't know. It just freaks me out. And I'm at the point where anything the left does is just, I'm skeptical and I'm suspicious. So this crime bill that's happening, the fact that the left likes it and wants it, means we shouldn't, probably.
Yeah.
There's something there. I don't know what it is. I don't know who they're letting out of prison. I'm not sure this is a good idea. What are they doing? And then they want felons to vote. And by state, they're starting to do that. They're doing anything they can to just steamroll over Americans.
Like that's the real hot issue that we need to address in this country. Can felons vote? Of all the damn things in this country that we need to fix, right?
Right. Well, they're doing it because they want Democrat voters. So,
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well-
Republicans are disenfranchising the poor criminals if they don't want that. Anyway, I don't know how the Democrats possibly won the propaganda war of voter ID being not acceptable for black people. Like, you know, how did they ever convince people that that was true? That black people shouldn't have to get an ID. What?
There was some great. There was a great man in the street.
I saw
where
that.
This
I
guy,
know what you're talking about.
Okay, you already know what I'm
He
going to say.
goes up to
then.
black people and they're like, "No, I have an ID. Yeah, I have an ID. What the hell?"
Yeah, like, do you think it's harder for you to get an ID? Because they're like,
Than white
what?
people? Yeah,
what are you talking
exactly.
about? Like, I know where the DMV is. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And they have these like white kids at Berkeley saying, "I don't, it's harder for black people to get their
Yeah.
license."
Oh
you know,
my
there's-
God, yeah. And then you
it's
talk to a
just
black
so
person, they're
awful.
like, no. Shut up, white people.
It's like
Yeah.
such an example of racism, So in terms of like fighting back against this, it occurred to me that one of the ways in which the left has put everyone on the defensive is through, identity politics and essentially calling people racist. And then you have to scramble, and people do this all the time. You see it every day. It's like, well, I want a secure border. You're a racist. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to just embrace that epithet, where you just, okay, I guess, the 3/4, by the way, they did a poll of like people all over the world, and it was like, it was a vast majority of people in every country are against illegal immigrants coming to their country. So apparently, like, everyone in the world is a racist according to the left because you disagree with, socialism. So we should just say, yeah, okay. And I thought, I'm going to start my own group. You know how Antifa is supposedly anti-fascism?
Yes.
My idea is we start a group called Antiped, and we're against pedophiles. And so, but underneath that organization, we support individual rights, capitalism,
Oh,
all
okay.
these other things,
Yeah.
like free, like free market healthcare. We have all these political positions that have nothing to do with pedophilia.
Okay.
But we call ourselves Antiped. And if someone disagrees with us,
We just call
what
him
do
a
we say?
pedophile.
What are you,
You're
a pedophile? I want free market healthcare. No, that's going to hurt the poor. What are you, a pedophile?
What do you want to have sex with little kids? Oh, you're sick.
Exactly,
You're
right?
sick. I like it.
Because that's what how can you be
Yeah.
against Antifa? Because they're
Right.
anti-fascist,
Right.
right? So you can't oppose Antifa because they're
Right.
against fascism. So how can you be against Antiped? No one could be against
Right.
us.
I agree. This is a good idea. This is a really
So-
good idea because that is, everybody accepts that that's bad. So we'll just use that as our slur from now on.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to smear me, then
Yeah.
I'm just going to smear you. So the next time someone says you're a racist or xenophobic or something, just say, what are you, a pedophile?
Yeah.
I hear you're a pedophile. And you know where else?
That's a perfect answer.
It's specific
You-
because it's
you're-
arbitrary.
That's xenophobic. Well, at least my views aren't pedophilic like yours.
Exactly. And you know where this even applies specifically is, have you heard this, like, the Veggie Tales are racist and,
No.
they go after these
Not
kids. They
surprising.
literally go after these kids shows.
I'm not surprised
specifically
broccoli
there.
is racist because it is a hated vegetable.
But think about it. Are they pedophiles or watching kids shows? Why are you watching kids shows?
Yeah.
Like, why do you care?
Yeah.
You're studying kids shows? It's kinda
Once in a while, an illegal immigrant might have been a pedophile. So, therefore, if you are
That's
for
right.
illegal immigration, you are for pedophilia. Absolutely. I see the connection.
So we're anti-ped.
Yeah,
now.
I like it.
I think we need to start like stalking Pelosi in restaurants and all
Yeah.
the Democratic leaders and
Right.
just say no to pedophilia.
What color is our outfits?
Our outfits. You're already,
And our
that's
bandanas.
That's such a girl like take. Like what are our outfits in anti-ped? I don't know.
It's my first concern, man.
That's right. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. It could get
Will
pretty
I like
dark.
the outfits? I think we should wear maybe blue. I look good in blue, so
I like it, but I'm just saying, like, seriously, if people are going to just throw around these epithets like this and start smearing you,
yeah, it's perfect.
just smear them back. Just say, you know what? Are you on the registry? Are you on I heard you're in your neighborhood's registry.
Yeah. Yeah. The second, I'm going to do that from now on. The next time someone calls me a racist, I'm just going to start immediately, not answer. I'm just going to start accusing them of being a sex criminal.
There's like.
That really is the perfect response because it calls out their logical fallacy. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And it makes them scramble.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, what? What are you talking about?
What do you mean? Perfect. I love it. That's such a good idea. Okay. You start the Facebook page. I will start sketching out the outfit. Okay.
And imagine like Facebook trying to shut that down.
Right.
Or YouTube trying to cancel us.
What if Facebook, are you anti-pedophile? Oh
So
my
you're
God. Are you pro-pedophile? Facebook is pro-pedophile, everybody. Okay. I love it. Hey, this is a good segue into Sargon of Akkad being called a racist and all that stuff and deplatformed off of Patreon. And Patreon thinks that it did like some sort of checkmate thing by publishing the transcript of what he said. They recently did this. This is their tripling down of stupidity that they are going to die by the end of January. I don't think they're going to exist anymore.
Wow. They're just completely like destroyed their own product.
They did, and it's not just because not everybody on Patreon is political, but when you have this mass exodus, people who are on Patreon who are just like doing hair videos, they're losing patrons. So pretty soon, they're not going to be able to really make the kind of money on there that they would otherwise, because people are leaving the platform because they were also supporters of Sargon or other people who've been deplatformed for political reasons. So Sargon of Akkad, just to recap, Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin, he's a liberal, okay? He is a classical liberal, but he's just very, very liberal. He's a British guy. But in the classic sense, he's a free speech guy. He's kind of libertarianish.
Civil libertarian,
yeah. So he's very against racism. He fights against it. He's hated by the alt-right. He fights against the alt-right very vocally, and he's willing to confront them. So he was on the channel. He was on the YouTube channel. He agreed to do an interview with a white supremacist, or maybe it's just a white separatist group. No, it's a white supremacist group because they were using the word nigger and stuff. And I'm just going to say it because I'm not a child. I'm not going to say N-word. I've decided.
Good.
We're all adults. We can handle hearing the word. So they use the word nigger against black people very derogatorily. This is this group. And so he, in a conversation with them, this is completely out of context, he started saying, you guys are acting like what you describe as a nigger is what you are. This is how you act, not how black people are acting.
Right.
That's what he was saying. And then he also used the word faggot. And again, first of all, I don't think that's really nearly as bad. And people use faggot not as a derogatory term toward gay people, but just as a derogatory term toward people. And so it doesn't necessarily, it's not like you're slurring a gay person necessarily. I realize that today it's not really appropriate, but I believe the people in this interview were also using that word. And so in like this span of a minute, he was throwing their words back at them and saying, you guys are this way. This is you. You're the niggers and faggots, the way that you've described it, not these people that you're attacking. And he's doing this in an anti-white supremacist way, okay? This is like his whole point. Right. And for that, just because he said the words, because the language is not allowed. And now, like, I could be deplatformed because I just said the words nigger and faggot. So if Patreon heard me say this, they could deplatform me just because I said the words. Not because I said them toward anybody or... This is where we're at, okay? This is literal fascism. It's literal word. I mean, okay, it's just a private company. But they're all working together. And the guy who runs Patreon even admitted that on Dave Rubin, that they all have each other's phone numbers. They're all on speed dial. They collude to decide what to do about people. And we know this because when they deplatform somebody, it happens in big hunks. And I was actually on they're private companies side until they started getting the financial companies involved. Because financial companies they're not private. They're basically fascist companies. They're so heavily regulated that if a government official calls them and says, that's a really nice company you have there, we don't like that you are providing banking for Sargon of Akkad, so do something about it. And they've done this, and we have proof that the top people at the FDIC and at the DOJ have intimidated banks to stop doing business with people and businesses that they deem immoral.
Yeah.
We have evidence of that, people. Google it because it just came out. We have evidence of this. So banks are not private. They're fascist. Okay? So then when I start seeing PayPal banning and Visa and MasterCard banning and deplatforming in the same hunk as Apple and Patreon and Facebook and Twitter and all of that, I'm sorry, but this is being done by the government. This is not a private action. This is a oligarchy of elitist assholes deciding what we will and will not be allowed to say or think. So it must be fought. It must be fought. And I am going to close my Patreon account by the end of the year. And I'm hoping that I will have an alternative. I started to open a Subscribestar account, which is where everybody was moving. But then PayPal deplatformed Subscribestar because that's where everybody was moving to. So you can see that they're trying to box us in.
Is there an alternative to PayPal starting?
No. I mean, there's Stripe. So you can go there, but Stripe is also deplatforming people. I'm sure the pressure's on. I don't know how you get past this banking thing. Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin have come out and said they're going to come out with some sort of solution to this. I don't know how they get past the banking thing because that to me is the big obstacle. Like Subscribestar, everybody would be on Subscribestar right now, moving all their patrons over there. That would have been the main thing going on this week. But the whole thing was brought to a, sudden halt because PayPal stepped in and deplatformed them. So now what do we do? I don't know. The banking thing is really a big problem. It's a big influence because you can't get money if you can't go through the banking system.
Right.
And this is extremely nefarious. And I am ready for, I'm not saying regulation. I don't think that's the right answer, but Sargon of Akkad is calling for an Internet Bill of Rights. I think that's probably correct, and I think it should be based on contract law. And I was thinking more about this, like when you enter into a contract with somebody, that contract is good until it's done. So when I went on Facebook, I should be subject to the TOC that I had when I first went on in 2006. They don't get to change it every minute because they feel like it. They should have to comply with the 2006 terms and conditions because that's when I joined. And, in the real world, I just don't understand why internet companies are getting away with illegal contract activity. Nobody would get away with this in the brick and mortar world.
Right.
So you put all this time, effort, money into building a store on Facebook, which is exactly what a page is. And then,
they're breaching the contract.
And then they shut you down just because they feel like it arbitrarily with no warning. And Patreon's doing that. People make their living on Patreon. They've been advertising for Patreon. Carl Benjamin has been on there since 2014, and he has been advertising for them for 4 years. He was one of the first users. He gets all of his income, or most of it, from there. And they just stopped it overnight. And he's got a family.
Right. Well, no, this is mass breach of contract. And I think it certainly warrants investigation and lawsuits. And the problem is that these companies are they're the biggest lobby in Washington, D.C.
They have so much money.
Good luck.
They have more money than countries, than states. I think somebody was saying like Amazon has more money than Rhode Island. It's like
Yeah, that's right.
They have a lot of influence, you guys, and I don't think that they're not using it.
Well,
I
this
don't
is
think
why.
that they're all leftists, so they're not principled freedom people. They're progressives who believe in more government. And you know, so wake up. I mean, stop thinking that this is free market. It's not.
That's right. And I mean, we have a mixed economy where the government can be used to threaten and, regulate and intimidate people. And, we saw this with, I had posted that article about that operation under the Obama administration that you were just referring to, where they were trying to shut down banks from dealing with gun merchants and other undesirables,
porn
whatever.
Companies. I think there was some porn companies. I mean,
yeah. So
in
they
America,
were using.
you just don't get to decide. If you're the government, you don't get to say you can't have a bank account because I don't think your business is moral.
No, and we don't have a free market economy where everything is privately owned, so everything is a private contract. We have a mixed economy where a great portion of the backbone, the utilities that we use, the roads, and banks and so on are all heavily regulated by the government in a fascistic way. They have a fascistic relationship with these companies, and you can't apply. If you're dealing with a utility, for example, which is heavily regulated and it's essentially a legal monopoly. That's not a private company. They couldn't say, well, guess what, Sonny, we don't like your politics, so we're not going to let you turn your air conditioner on today, or you can't use electricity, or you can't drive on this road. I mean, there has to be recognition of the fact that when a company's not fully private, that there has to be protections for consumers that are forced to use these companies that are heavily regulated.
Yeah, and I feel like I mean, there've been all these stupid hearings that go nowhere, and I feel like they go nowhere on purpose.
Right.
And some people make some loud noises, but they're not really going after these breaches of contract. And Congress should be involved because this is a massive fraud.
Yeah,
and
it's an
these
interstate
companies are
issue
too big and too rich that the government has to step in and say, you are defrauding billions of people. And at least, our entire population here in the United States. And it's got to stop because people have rights. And it's not enough to say, oh, well, just get off the platform. You don't have to have social media. I mean, you can't really have a business today without it. So.
Well, also, these companies, their business model was based around, and they got big based around being neutral platforms. Publicly declared as neutral platforms, which have special exemptions under FCC regulations to shield them from liability.
And they continue to say that they're neutral, and they're not. They're lying, and we all know that.
They're lying, of course. And so you can't have it both ways under the law. So easily, the Congress could act tomorrow, and of course they're not, because they're so huge, and they're
getting paid off. They're all bought off.
Right. So if you think,
so we need a Louis XIV to just arrest these guys. That's what I'm saying. That was my whole point. They've gotten too big. Their garden is too goddamn impressive.
You know what I was thinking too when you were talking about Sargon and him using those epithets and then taking them out of context? Have you ever seen the scene in Monty Python's Life of Brian where they're having a stoning for this guy who uttered the name of the Lord, Jehovah? Yes. And he accidentally, as he's reading, as the cleric or the administrator is reading the charges, he accidentally says Jehovah, so the people start stoning.
Yes, exactly.
It's like a perfect example of that. You said the word.
Exactly. Do we really want to live in that society, everybody? Obviously, the people who listen to this program do not. And we are going to have to fight for this. That is the truth. It's, unfortunately, I don't know. This is not leading to a good place, everybody. And I'm scared that the right is not going to be tough enough. I'm just really worried that our side is not very committed.
Well, I think it goes back to the moral foundation and people not giving in to identity politics and to political correctness. And I think it's time for people to just start saying, okay, fine,
you're a pedophile.
whatever. yeah, you're a pedophile, and
Yeah.
we're going to build a wall. So fuck you.
I posted like I really like Kurt Schlichter as an
Yeah,
author. I
he's
don't know if you're
great.
familiar with him, but he
Yeah.
he has taken a side. He is all in for that side.
His last article was awesome. That's probably what you're thinking
So I
about.
posted that, and somebody, a friend of mine, wrote, "Oh my, this guy is just awful."
What?
Yeah, and
It was called Pardon Everyone Except That Rat Cohen.
yeah, and
Where he
his
was-
language is funny, but he's really unapologetic, and he has moral certainty. Let's put it that
Yeah.
way.
You say we don't have a justice system. Let's not pretend we do.
Yeah.
We got to just go all out here and fight for what we believe in.
So he says this, and it really turned off this friend of mine who is on the right. She's she's an objectivist. Maybe she's a left-sided
she's on the right.
objectivist. I don't know, but I don't regard her as somebody who has like leftist politics. So I was kind of surprised, but she just couldn't handle the language. It was so mean and so divisive, and I'm just like, look.
Uh-huh.
It's really, I don't think the right wants to fight at all. But if we don't start fighting, we're going to lose. We are going to lose.
What do you mean divide? I mean, we better be divisive.
Yeah, we have to be. We have to start
You better
fighting
take
back.
a side.
That's
What
right.
do you want to do? Be friends with these people? I mean,
They own everything. They own the culture, the media, the narrative. They own a lot of politics. I don't know. They're really powerful. The universities, they're indoctrinating all these people. And let's not be naive, and think it's going to get better if we just keep going down this road. They're becoming more and more socialist. Meanwhile, we're sitting around, twiddling our thumbs. So that's my biggest concern, is that the right really doesn't have the moral certainty to fight back.
yeah.
So the other, just quickly, news on the social media front is that came out that Amazon and Facebook have had a data sharing agreement this whole time. And I remember specifically, and this has come up over and over and over on Facebook, where somebody says, I just bought this thing on Amazon, and like instantly I'm getting ads for it on Facebook. And, I bought it on Amazon on my phone, and then I go on Facebook on my computer and I'm getting ads for it. And I just
Or you
bought
just
it.
search for it. Or you don't
Or you
even
just
have to
search
buy
for
it.
it, yeah.
You just search for it.
And then I'm told, oh, well, it's because, AdSense is everywhere. And then there's this cross communication. I'm like, geez, that's awfully fast, And okay, I buy it. I guess, the internet is a miracle. But now, no, it turns out that they have had instant sharing with each other. They're sharing, and we didn't know this. They didn't tell us. They lied about it, actually. The other thing that came out was that Facebook has been sharing our private messages with Netflix and Spotify. So my reaction to this is just like, my New Year's resolution is going to be, I'm going to revamp my whole online habits and presence, because I'm just kind of done with this shit. I want to be online, and I'm going to be online. It's not going to be in the same way. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stop using Messenger. I'm going to pare my Facebook down to really just running my page. I'm not going to be personal on there anymore. I'm moving over to, I know that the problem is everything is owned by all of these bad actors. So like if I want to move to Instagram, well, Facebook owns Instagram. And if I want to move to WhatsApp for messaging, well, Facebook owns that too. And, so it's difficult, but I'm going to look into it and figure out what I'm going to do. Patreon also has to be moved. We'll figure that out. I'm hoping that Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin are coming up with something interesting. It sounds like Jordan Peterson's been working on something for the past year on building a new platform. So that is exciting. And then I want to move into just a quick discussion about the economy, since that's your expertise. And I've just been noticing a lot of chatter that we are headed for a recession. That's what everybody's saying. I'm not seeing anybody not saying that. And it sounds like it's imminent. And that's pretty scary. What's going on, Doug?
Well, I'm pretty cynical. I mean, I don't know that we ever recovered from the last recession, but
I agree. I haven't felt it. I've felt it a little bit this year.
And I mean, first you got to talk about like what is a recession. Usually, they have a definition about that in terms of like GDP being negative and stuff like that. But here's the real like big picture idea, which is that recessions and booms and recessions are created by the government. There's no natural tendency towards depressions and these gigantic economic booms. Some things go bad, some things go good, but in aggregate, there's always things going good and going bad.
Right.
And the reason why we have these kinds of things, and yes, there is a recession now, and the stock market is getting destroyed over the last 2 months,
and
I think things are
getting
getting worse.
I suppose today that's especially true because we're so diversified that if you just have a free market, like, some industries might do bad at certain times. Maybe you have a bad crop of something.
Yes.
And you have, the coffee industry goes bad for some natural disaster reason or something, but it doesn't take everything down.
Yeah, and trends change. Some industries go away and some industries emerge. But as long as people want to work and produce, and they're free to produce and work and create and innovate, the world will always be a great place. In other words, there's a natural drive that people have to want a better life, and they want to work and they want to produce, and that's where wealth comes from. It comes from people producing goods and wanting to work and do things and meet the demands of consumers. And so, the only thing that can get in the way of that really is the government, and particularly these days, not only just through regulation and taxes, but through the nature of our banking system. And now this is a real complicated, or can be a complicated topic, so I don't want to get into the details of it, but in essence, what happens is the government creates money, and it can create as much money as it wants through the Federal Reserve System. And, because they've nationalized the system through the Federal Reserve, they have this board of central planning apparatchiks, sort of like the Soviet Politburo trying to plan crops, how well that went.
I'm sure they do a great job.
Who supposedly determine the short-term interest rate, and they have the means through the Federal Reserve System to manipulate the amount of credit in the system, which in turn leads to expansions and contractions in the banking system. And they do this by purchasing government debt. But what it does, in essence, when the government goes about counterfeiting money, essentially creating money out of thin air, what that does is it induces all sorts of negative effects. And one of the effects it has is to generate what they call malinvestment. So we saw this in the housing boom, in the 2000s, when there was all these people buying these homes, and they're buying homes, and home prices are going up, so you buy more homes. And there's rather than there being sort of like a natural stop to that process, as you put more and more money, you just think about this, if you could counterfeit money in your basement and you started spending money in your town where you live.
That'd be great.
It would be awesome. It would be awesome for you.
Yeah.
Until everyone else is spending the money that you counterfeited, and you start seeing prices go up everywhere, and no one's produced more goods. It's just they have more paper claims against it, so all the prices start going up. But so anyways, it has profound impacts on the economy in aggregate, and it creates malinvestments. It creates people investing money. They get false signals sent to them from interest rate markets, and they end up investing in things that they really shouldn't be investing in. And the whole structure of production gets screwed up because the interest rate signals what the interest rate does is it modulates people's time preference. People have, like, you want to save a certain amount of your money and you want to spend a certain amount of your money, and the interest rate is sort of the free market's measure of those time preferences and people's willingness to save and people's willingness to consume. And when that rate gets distorted and starts telling people there are more savings than there really are, people start investing in longer term projects or shorter term projects based on that interest rate. And they start investing in capital or, taking on, like, for example, I'll give you an example, like in the energy industry, there's been a huge capital expenditure in the energy industry, and a lot of that was funded with very cheap credit. Interest rates have been very low. The Fed has been keeping interest rates low now for a decade. They were at zero, and in some countries it's negative. And again, this isn't just happening in the United States. This happens in Japan and through the European Central Bank too. And when you have this zero rate money and you have people able to, let's say, overexpand in something like energy, well, what happens when energy prices go down and there's overproduction? Well, all those companies go bankrupt and all that capital has to be liquidated. And, when you see these effects happening all over the economy, and you can see, usually in hindsight, people look back at these scenarios and they say, oh my God, I can't believe people were paying for pets.com, or, they were buying tulip bulbs, or, people were paying $10 for Blue Apron stock, or whatever or they were flipping houses, and they were buying condos for $1 million, and now the condos are worth $100,000.
Yeah.
People look back at this and say, I can't believe there was this huge mania and we didn't really see it. We didn't get it while it was happening. Well, this happens over and over again. And what's just to get back to the present, in 2008, there was a massive financial crisis that occurred as a result of the blowing up of the subprime debt market. And it required years. And what recessions do is it's really a cleansing process. When you have a recession as a result of a boom, people have to go bankrupt and liquidate all these bad investments, and prices should fall. And, you can recover then on a more sound footing. And the government upended that process in 2008 by getting into what was called quantitative easing, which was essentially them just creating money out of thin air to the tune of trillions of dollars. So they expanded the money supply in a way that would never have been expanded before, by trillions and trillions of dollars. They expanded their balance sheet to about $4 trillion, and which can be levered even further. And so, we had this big boom in asset prices over the last 10 years, and they've kept interest rates very low.
Yeah.
And,
what are
we've
they
seen
doing now? Aren't they going to raise interest rates? And
well, they have been for 2 years.
Do you think they're sabotaging Trump?
No, I don't. I think this has been going on ever since there's a central bank. No,
but do you think they're deliberately raising interest rates because it's his administration?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
I think what was happening was,
because I'm hearing that. I'm hearing people say that.
Yeah, I don't buy that completely. I just think I don't think the Federal Reserve can ever be right because they're central planners. It would be like asking a group of 5 guys in Washington, what should shoe prices be?
Right.
I don't know. Ask a guy, it depends.
Like all billions of them. What should all the billions of shoes?
Sonny, what should the shoe price be? It's ridiculous. So it's just an impossible job. The Fed should just be disbanded, and we should just have free market banking. But the point is that they've been raising interest rates now for 2 years. So when you create the boom, the process can go in reverse. And so when you start raising interest rates and money starts to come out of the system, all those investments and all that money that was being lent, and companies buying back their own stock to boost their own stock prices, and all the things that are going on, people buying Bitcoin and all this nonsense. All these things are going on, and then that process now has to go in reverse. And so as financial conditions tighten, you start to see waves of bankruptcies, and usually, you'll start to see things blow up. And really, in the last couple months, you've really started to see the impact of some of these Fed rate hikes starting to really.
Where's the bubble? What should people be looking at?
Well, the bubble. First of all, look at the stock market.
Yeah.
The stock market had gotten to extraordinary highs, and in my view, extremely overvalued, ridiculously overvalued.
Okay.
I think you're seeing debt being sold by corporations that are pretty crappy corporations, being sold for prices that were way too high. So if you're a bad company and you have you're pretty shady, or not shady, but you're kind of on the.
You don't have a very good financial statement scenario.
You're going to have to pay a lot of money for debt. If you issue debt, you probably have to pay a high rate. Well, some of these companies were able to issue debt for next to nothing, even though they were crappy companies. So, when you see low interest rates and easy financial conditions, anyone can get a loan, right? It's like the same thing that happened. But instead of the subprime lenders being, these people that were buying homes in the 2000s, a lot of the subprime lenders now are corporations that were crappy corporations that probably shouldn't have been getting cheap debt.
Okay, so
and governments.
So stock market
like
is
Italy and
inflated.
Greece.
Yeah, right. Are we going to see more, like the Greece crisis? Are we going to see that happening overseas? Are we going to see the stock market crashing?
Well, I think the stock market has been crashing. It's down about 20%.
Right.
It just took a couple of months. Usually in the past, sometimes we've seen these crashes happen in a day, but it's happened in sort of slow motion where, stocks are down about 20%. No, I think it's going to keep going. I think things are really bad. I think this is really just the beginning. And
what can
you look at a company
do to protect themselves? Is there anything simple people can do? Not traders or.
I can't give investment advice or anything, but my basic approach is to be, I own a lot of precious metals because they don't go down in value. They don't necessarily go up in value, but they don't go down in value because metal is what it is.
Right.
So I buy precious metals and cash, and I don't.
So you're not buying Bitcoin.
No, I think Bitcoin is a symptom of the bubble because I think it's it's essentially.
It looks like a big scam to me. It's so not a precious metal. It's so far from that. It's removed even from regular fiat money backed by a government. I don't know why people. No, it's essentially
like shitty fiat money because it depends on fiat money. It's essentially like a unsecured digital debenture or bearer bond.
Yeah, it seems weird. It seems like just a floating crazy scam.
Yeah, and I think it's a symptom of and those have crashed too. So I think you just got to be aware of it and probably not.
Asset commodities, things that don't really change their value because they are what they are. Maybe
I
even
think land,
cash.
real estate, cash.
But real estate isn't real estate kind of a bubble, or certain kinds of real estate maybe? I don't know.
I think the kind of real estate you want to own where you're a landlord and you can charge rent.
Yeah.
I think it's still a hard asset. And because what the government's going to do, the government can only do one thing. The Fed can only do one thing. It can print more money.
Right.
So as things crash and things get worse, what they'll probably end up doing is
inflating.
Re-engaging and reinflation and printing more money. And it's going to, what's it going to do? Here we go again. It's going to. And so the only way you can protect yourself from fiat currency is to not be in fiat currency as much as you can avoid it.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know. This could get really, who knows, right? Like when the scary thing about stuff like this is when it starts to, you think people will learn their lesson and they'll see the light when the shit hits the fan. And not necessarily. We might end up with Cortez as the president or Bernie Sanders.
That's exactly what I think happens, actually. I think that in crisis, people vote for protection. Mm-hmm. They don't vote for freedom. Even
they don't know.
If freedom is the answer, they won't vote for it. They are going to vote for safety and security. They're going to vote for welfare. Mm-hmm. And that's why you see, I remember when I had that epiphany when Greece was rioting in the streets. When they were totally bankrupt, because and I thought, oh, good, Greece, the Greeks, they're waking up. No, it was like 25% of the people were in the streets protesting that they were getting less entitlement benefits from the government.
No, they felt they had to work too hard. That's not fair.
They wanted they wanted their pensions to stay the same. They didn't want the austerity measures. And so I thought, that is exactly right. The shit is hitting the fan, the chickens are coming home to roost, and these people are saying, no, I won't take it. They're continuing to stamp their foot at reality.
Well, and a lot of it is the fault of them. It's the fault of Americans, too, because how many Americans demand these entitlements, and then if their taxes go up, they don't want to pay higher taxes. So, we've gotten away with this because the government's been able to, we have a relatively great country, and we've gotten away with it because we've been able to issue debt to the tune of 20-something trillion dollars to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And people have bought the debt, and interest rates have been low. And now it's getting to the point, though, where if rates go higher...
$22 trillion. And what was it just 20 years ago? I mean, it was one?
Yeah. And think about it. 10% interest on 20 trillion is 2 trillion. I mean, our federal budget right now is about 4 trillion a year. That's how much the government spends, which is unbelievable.
So two of it is the interest. One of it is more than one of it is borrowed to increase the debt.
Well, out of that 4 trillion,
like what's revenues? I think it's only 2 or 3 trillion a year.
Yeah, so they have to borrow
another trillion just to pay the interest. That is a death spiral.
Well, yeah, they'll never repay the debt, and that's why they inflate the money supply, because if you owe debt, you want prices to go up, because then you're paying people back with cheaper money. And so their whole game is a Ponzi scheme. They have to issue more debt to pay off the previous debtors. And I heard one economist say that they ought to hire Bernie Madoff as the Secretary of Treasury, since he's an expert in Ponzi schemes.
He's really good at it. He's convincing too. Yeah, get him out of jail and get him a job.
Yeah, get that man to work.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining me today, Doug, to do our news basket. And I'm not going to talk Patreon because that's usually how I end the show, but there's nothing to say there. Hey, but you know what? We love your comments. We really do. So comment on YouTube. Comment, I don't know, we'd love to be rated in iTunes. Call in a joke, 707-681-5834. And we're not going to be here next week, but the week after, there will be a show. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded. And because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.